coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Here.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCullough?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mr. Escobedo? With 5 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you, and I would like to thank Rod Waddell and Connor Childers, who are working behind the scenes to produce the broadcast of our board meeting tonight on Channel 20. So thank you guys for your help with that. We will now move on to the petitions and communication portion of our meeting, when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communication portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comment portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. We just have one speaker tonight, but I want to remind you that we have a clock on the wall to help you with your 2 minutes. We thank you for your interest and for your cooperation with our guidelines. So our speaker tonight is Amanda McAllister. Amanda, if you'll turn the microphone on there.
Okay, I think it's on.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I am Amanda McAllister. Last week, my oldest child, Victoria, started kindergarten at Cherry Valley Elementary. I come here tonight as a teacher and a community member to discuss the safety of the children of our district. My husband and I arranged for Victoria to go to aftercare at the Floatin' Boys and Girls Club. I went to the transportation office and filled out the paperwork. In July, the postcard said the correct information. Last Monday, instead of being brought to aftercare, my 5-year-old daughter was told to get off the bus at our neighborhood stop. She was found crying in the street by a woman I had met that morning. They called me and I rushed to get her. Afterwards, my husband spoke with the principal. I talked at the transportation center. The drop-off location had been changed back to our house without my knowledge or consent. Transportation suspected the new routing software was to blame and fixed it immediately. They assured me Victoria would be dropped off at the correct location starting Tuesday. I completed a Let's Talk ticket, emailed the principal and my daughter's teacher, sent a note in Victoria's folder, and personally spoke with the bus driver the following morning. I called the Boys and Girls Club Tuesday afternoon. Despite all my effort and everyone's promises, my daughter was not brought to aftercare. At that point, I didn't know where she was. I rushed out of my classroom for the 2nd day in a row. I called the neighbor who had taken Victoria into her house the day before. No answer. I called transportation. No answer. 5 agonizing minutes later, my neighbor called back saying she had Victoria. According to my neighbor, the driver's sheet still had the wrong drop-off location. Thankfully, after yet another visit to transportation, the school, and a very lengthy email to board members and administration, everything appears to be fixed. There were hundreds of ways the story could have ended so badly. Thankfully, my daughter just has a skinned knee. I didn't come here tonight for sympathy, apologies, or to get anyone in trouble. I want to know what steps are being taken to ensure this never happens again to any child or family in the district. I have prepared a packet with the original email, the Let's Talk ticket, and a list of suggested solutions to ensure this doesn't happen. Thank you for your time and attention to this problem.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, there are no other community speakers, but I'll ask at this time, are there any board member comments? Mr. Siegel.
To the family and friends of Robert Hernandez and to the Jefferson and Barber school communities, on behalf of the Board of Education of Rockford Public Schools 205, I want to extend my sincerest condolences for your terrible, terrible loss.
Mr. Dixon.
I just want to thank the board members, superintendent, and the cabinet for 4 months of going back and forth to Chicago with my daughter. And now I can finally say tomorrow she'll be coming home. So thank everybody for their prayers and support.
Well, we're very excited about that. Any other board member comments? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the consent portion of our agenda, including the following items: the meeting minutes from August 14th, 2018, payroll report, the accounts payable, purchase orders, construction bid request log, contracts under 10,000, student travel and travel, the recurring contract for the extended day programming, the other consent items including the IASB annual membership, the monthly investment report for June and July of this year, the resolution authorizing the fiscal year depositories, investment managers and dealers and brokers, the FY19 budget transfers resolution, the new school construction change order logs, the RPS managed work change order logs, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Connor?
8A.
8A, okay. Mr. Dixon?
6A.
6A, okay. Any others? Okay, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
I'll now take a motion and second to approve the item 6A, which is the meeting minutes of August 14th.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any question or discussion? Not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the motion.
Mr. Dixon?
Abstain.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Abstain.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
3-2.
The motion, sorry. The motion passes with 3 yeses, 2 absent, and 2 abstain.
Next, I'll take a motion and a second to approve the item 8A, which is the IASB annual membership.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Questions or discussion? Mr. Connor.
Because we did talk about this at the last time and it was tabled, I wanted to make sure that we would set aside some time for board members to make comments.
Okay.
The IASB membership.
Anyone would like to make a comment? Mr. Siegel?
When I first saw this a couple years ago, I really questioned the wisdom of the membership fee structure, but that's kind of what it was, so we went along with it. We've negotiated a little bit better of a price on it. I'm still, I guess, not super stoked about the membership fee structure, but it is definitely a lot better. And under our current circumstances, where we have Ms. Hoadley not only doing a lot of, doing still the legal counsel work, but also carrying a lot of the operations load, some of the efficiencies that are offered for Ms. Hoadley, I think will go a very, very long way towards making this a fairly decent value. I know that we've got a couple of throw-ins, a free training from IASB, which will be great. I hope that they coordinate with our own team and create a really impactful meeting for us. But really, I'm going to be in support of this largely because of the efficiencies this is going to offer to Ms. Hoadley.
Thank you. Ms. McCullough.
So Ms. Hoadley, could you talk about the, because I feel like I'm being held hostage. We're going to do this because it's good for legal. I don't know that it helps the rest of the board. I want to support it for the sake of legal, because I think, but I want to make sure that we all understand what we're getting from it as compared to what we as a board are going to benefit by being a member. So, and I can, that's why I wanted to make sure I understood.
Well, and I appreciate that it's being framed as being of assistance to me, but it's also a great assistance to the full board because you need to have your policies updated. You really want to make sure that you're operating within the framework of the law, which is what the ISBE brings to the table. So they have a team of lawyers who work on the policies every year. If the legislature weren't so busy, both the federal and the state, they probably wouldn't need a team of lawyers. But that's the reality of it. They go through policy by policy. Any new statutory or regulatory items are then incorporated into the policy. So what that would look like if I had to do it, and I have had to do it in the past, I didn't do as extensively or as detailed as I should have because there was only really one of me. But in any event, you would have to go through all of the statutory changes and make sure that all of the policies are updated from a man-hour standpoint. Again, you have a team of lawyers at ISB, full-time lawyers, and one of me, so it really does make a difference. But while it benefits the workload that I have, it also benefits the full board as well as all of the employees.
And I appreciate your framing it that way because it does, I mean, that is the job of the board is to make sure our policies are up to date. Is there not some duplication because of our lobbyists and the reports I read and the changes that are being litigated, or, that are going through our legislature?
He only captures some of them.
You can't just peel that out of it, no?
No, he only captures a few of the major changes that he's involved with.
Sure.
So you'll see some of them, but there are ancillary type of changes, for example, for the Freedom of Information Act, or all kinds of things that would impact a municipal school district like us. So it incorporates all of the federal laws and everything else.
And I see Dr. Jarrett has his light on, and as you speak, if you would just reiterate where we were with the funding structure to where they've moved based on the work that you and Ken had done sitting down with them. Could you take a second to do that
Absolutely.
as well as whatever you were going to say?
Absolutely. First, I'd be happy to do that. I also just wanted to point out, right now, every 3 years, the regional office is required by the Illinois State Board of Education to conduct a very extensive audit. It's about 200 to 300 items. It used to be 300. They've cut it back a little bit. Probably 75% of that work is contingent upon having all of your board policies updated. And so one response to this could be, well, gosh, if we get a little behind on our policies, maybe that's not a big deal. But we saw firsthand as we had our meeting on Friday afternoon to preview with Scott Bloomquist, who works at the regional office. You can see firsthand how valuable this and how really necessary it is for the policies to be updated. And thanks for the opportunity to speak about the other component. This was a very poorly designed fee structure, and our board, I think, has correctly been frustrated about it. Our administrative team has been frustrated, and while there is still really good overall value at the very high price we pay, it is not an equitable fee structure. And so what the Illinois Association of School Boards did is they agreed to sit down with the new incoming president, Dr. Bertrand, as well as the outgoing president of the association. And Mr. Scrivano and I met with them and gave some suggestions, and they really listened. They didn't solve it all at once, but they raised the fee structure for smaller districts because the entire concept was based on putting school districts in tiers. And the smaller you are, the lower the tier is, which to an extent makes sense. But we were in a tier that didn't cap out until $40,000, and there were some districts that were paying less than $1,000. And so, when we certainly, in many cases, were not using more services, in many cases we were using less. We also had to pay extra for training services. So what you can see in the ISB letter that's attached is they did really, I think, listen. They threw in the cost of press because of us paying the additional amount, which is an $850 value on top of the value that Mrs. Hoadley talked about. We did get a training in place, which I think was really valuable. And our current structure, not only is it set for 30,000 instead of 37,000 where we're scheduled to be, but it will not go up anytime in the future because 30,000 is now the top level for us. I think only if the city of Chicago CPS schools were to get in would there be that level higher than that. So we did the work that benefited many other districts in the region that benefited from the conversation that Ken and I had, and we were really appreciative that they did listen. While I don't think this is perfect, I think it was a good enough step where Ken and I left the meeting feel like we were heard and comfortable making the recommendation to the board. And I think there still is an opportunity to go further. One of the things we talked about was support from statewide associations about having conversations about best practice in collective bargaining, for example. There are some real gaps in the training. Some of the best sessions we have had at the Tri-Conference have had to do with gaining access to information about what other districts have done and working collaboratively with their collective bargaining units. In fact, last year we had a chance to present about some of our work in that area, so it was nice to talk about that. So I do think there are some opportunities here and some concepts that were addressed, so thanks for asking, Mrs. McCullough.
Mr. Connor?
Yep. I do support this with a couple big howevers.
Okay.
I'm very sympathetic to what Mrs. McCulloch said. And I think the other thing is, the reason that I would say I would vote for this is a matter of trust. I think that Dr. Jarrett and Mr. Scrivano did a really good job in going back and negotiating. And my context is, I know this is going to shock everybody, so please grab your chairs, is that the state is not the most flexible animal that's ever been on the planet. And so my gut check is that IASB was pretty complacent. And I think we have done something, which is we've made a statement, and I think they would be foolish if they think that what they've done is in a sense good enough. And I think, I mean, coming from private sector, customer service surveys or whatever you want to call it is something that they desperately need. And maybe they do something like that, but
They do.
I think the point is that the direct input from boards across the board, you know, irrespective of size, is something that they need to really pay attention to. So I trust the effort and appreciate that, but I think we have established that we have a number of things we're looking at, and if this comes back up, I believe in 3 years, right? Is that the? No, this is an annual one.
Yep.
Oh, well, okay, well, so much the better.
So the proof is to be in the pudding.
So the proof has to be in the pudding in a year. I think we've started it out, so thank you to both of you for doing this, but I think the point is there needs to be more follow-up.
Mr. Dixon?
I was just going to follow up with what Mike said, Mr. Connor said, is I'm going to support it, but there are some concerns that we have, some big whatevers he called them. The biggest thing that I really want to pour from this is what can the board get from them that will help us be better board members. So I'm willing to explore that through another year.
Well, I have nothing else to add that hasn't been said, so I'll call the vote then on item 8A, which is has been moved and seconded for the IASB annual membership.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
Okay, we are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the appointment of Amanda Shuga as the 12-month Certified Teacher Effectiveness Director, the appointment of Joyce Turnipseed as the 12-month Program Administrator for Health Services, the appointment of Shanta McClinton as the 12-month Special Ed Program Administrator, non-certified, and the HR Organizational Report and Addendum. And we did not have any student disciplines to go through, so. Keep that up.
Yeah,
That's right.
right.
Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Dixon. Any items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Hearing none, we'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes,
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Chair.
I'm going to have both Matt Zedeker and Heidi Detman give an overview of Teacher Institute Day, absent a report. I thought it was a very relevant topic. It was a gigantic investment in teacher time and staff time. I think we've made some very significant improvements, but there, of course, were some lessons learned. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Detman and Mr. Zedeker to give a solid overview. You also received some additional details in your weekly update.
Thanks, Dr. Jarrett. I will start, and I'm going to cover kind of the logistics and registration portion of Institute Day. When we started planning this last spring, we were looking at specifications for our space. So we wanted to look at buildings that had air conditioning, traffic, available seating for adult bodies, and then we did look at parking. So in preparation, after registering all of our courses, from a PD standpoint and a team standpoint, we did visit each learning space. We looked at technology needs, we looked at seating, we also looked at environmental factors, we communicated with everyone in terms of travel registration. So we did a lot of the upfront communication to try to prepare both our presenters, but also staff. There were some, I like to highlight some plus deltas here. Some of the pluses that all 3 locations were set up and ready for learning. So in terms of computer, projection, available space, everything was ready to go for that first session on Thursday afternoon. We had welcome teams at each building that provided customer support. We were able to reach individual needs of teachers. We were able at those kind of welcome teams to accommodate teachers who either needed to change a session, hadn't registered yet, or were on the wait list and didn't receive communication, so we were able to give some individual teacher attention. We had over 1,900 REA members registered prior to the Tuesday evening before, so we did reach quite a few members in terms of registration for sessions. And then the team really did a nice job in terms of communication, really multiple times communicating to guide people in advance to what the changes are in the workshops, what available sessions there were. We even gave out directions because there was traffic issues and construction for Jefferson and how to get back to the back parking lot in Eisenhower. So we tried to be very clear with communication prior to the event. As Dr. Jarrett mentioned, there were some oversights and logistical things that we need to fix. Number one, the air condition malfunction at Eisenhower. So one of the main reasons we ended up having to go to Eisenhower was air conditioner, and that malfunctioned Thursday morning. The pro is the facilities team got out there really, really quickly, but it didn't cool off fast enough for our REA members. We also didn't appropriately balance the load of seats and parking spots at Eisenhower as we were looking and really concerned with the number of available seats in our sessions for teachers. We really didn't factor in the number of available parking spots at Eisenhower, and that's certainly a lesson learned in terms of even day 1 where we made an adjustment for day 2. So that parking was a major challenge, and if the board recalls, we acted a little with our continuous improvement value and were able to get shuttles for the next day where teachers could park at Montessori over at Marsh, and we shuttled them over to ease some of that congestion for day 2. And then the one major delta that we are working on as an administration is the communication prior to August 1. We really want to get this out to our employees before the end of school so that registration, questions, communication can all be done up front so that going into the summer, our staff know what to expect for next year's Institute Days. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Detman for content.
So we organized all of our workshops really around 3 strands, which mirror the strands in the school scorecard, which you'll be learning more and more about throughout the fall. And those 3 strands are quality instruction, climate and culture, and continuous improvement. So all of our workshops were differentiated by role and level, and they were organized under those 3 strands. We determined the content of those workshops based on the superintendent's rounding visits and what he heard when he asked that additional question about what teachers need in high-quality PD. We also vetted the ideas through instructional council, district leadership team, and our curriculum leadership teams. Sessions were differentiated by role and level and in an effort to provide targeted professional learning for all. Some of our pluses for content include some anecdotal feedback that differentiated learning was both productive and engaging. We had a multitude of consistent, differentiated, and yet aligned professional development, which is something that's a major improvement over the last several years. We engaged 32 REA members as speakers or presenters, and we want to see that number steadily grow so that teachers are learning from teachers, coaches are learning from coaches, etc. We provided a trauma-informed care overview to more than 900 teachers or staff, which is a response to what we heard all year long last year about the need for more capacity building and trauma-informed care and practices in the classroom. We sold out sessions early. Integrated literacy was sold out before the end of the day on day 1, and so we were able to pivot and add 150 more seats to meet demand. We also provided opportunities for teachers who were unable to attend the summer PD curriculum overview, which was a 2-day deep dive. We modified those for new curriculum that's rolling out this year to be a 3-hour kind of nuts and bolts, what you need to know to get the school year started, and we offered those for all new curriculum. The deltas in this area include that we had demand that was far greater in some areas than our supply of seats. And this is where we need to grow our numbers of REA speakers and presenters, sharing their best practices with colleagues across the district. When we're limited to school classrooms, that limits our comfort level of adult bodies to about 25. And when we have a limited number of presenters, it puts some obstacles in our way for just opening up seats for what we know the demand will be. And as a result, many teachers didn't get their first choice sessions, and so had to kind of go workshop shopping through our session catalog to find relevant sessions for them. And we know that it was a challenge for teams who wanted to learn together to register together. So as we move forward and design these opportunities, we want to make sure that we're keeping our maximum seats driven by the need, that we're engaging more presenters, and that we're allowing teams to stay together and learn together. So for our next steps, as collaborative partners here, we're going to continue to align our professional learning to the school scorecard and the district strategic plan. We're going to continue to gather feedback for continuous improvement. The weekend immediately following Institute, we had 63 Let's Talks, all offering suggestions for improvement, and we've shared them and explored all of them. We'll also explore blended learning opportunities to ease some of the logistical congestion and concerns. And next year, as Mr. Zediker mentioned, we'll have registration up for Institute Days and open before teachers leave for the summer so that they can collaborate tightly with their principals and grade level teams or PLC and make sure that everyone is clear and consistent in the messaging and the importance of these days. Thank you.
So, maybe a common theme across both, but first to logistics. It sounds like it was successful. I think the thing that I'd like to see in print, if I might say so, is the contrast year over year, because I think it shows what the improvement looks like, what the numbers were, et cetera, et cetera. And that really does include, from my point of view, Let's Talk. I mean, I really think having these numbers, and when I heard, which is very encouraging, that you had the REA engaged, I think the question is, what's a good number for that? I mean, the first thing, again, I always hate to bring up work, but the first thing we do is we say, well, that's my current number. What is a target that makes sense? And so I'd like to see us have some kind of scorecard. On the logistics side, it sounds like Ms. Detman is, addressing some of that, but it does sound like there could be some process improvement on this one, so it would be nice to see that. on the content side, I think the one thing I would be interested in is what are the areas of most concern to teachers and what does that mean? I mean, sometimes we hear individual pieces and it's hard for me because I don't know the topics as well as how it all ties together. So that would be real useful. It's just some kind of summary that says, hey, our direction is, I'm making it up, blended learning plus whatever. I mean, that would be helpful because then we know that's a trend and we should be looking for that. And maybe there's more things that we do. So I think the ideas are good. Obviously, it sounds like a success. But again, some kind of dashboard and then some sort of a really analysis or summary that would help us to understand context because, again, it sounded successful.
Any other comments or questions? Anything else, Dr. Jarrett? Okay. We'll move on then to our action item, which is for tonight is the first one is the easement for traffic signal installation at 525 Pierpont Avenue to improve the safety of that intersection by Auburn High School. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Siegel.
I am the least patient motorist in the city, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing this stoplight at this particular intersection. I have for a long time enjoyed going west and having Johnson be the last stoplight before getting out of town.
Okay.
But I also have kids who have experienced some significant difficulty at that intersection and have talked with other parents who have had similar difficulty. I think this is going to be a very positive thing for the school community around Auburn. And bus drivers, I think, are going to be a lot more relaxed about it. Parents, certainly, and of course, students and their attendant insurance rates, I'm sure, are going to be much happier.
Thank you. Mrs. McCullough.
Personally, I wish it were going to be a roundabout.
Okay.
Because I did Auburn all those years where Maine and Auburn was a stoplight, and
Yeah.
now when I go
And the
through,
waiting
it's a
and the
roundabout.
waiting.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
okay.
God. And then people would take the back way around down King and stuff, and I just think that, especially with all the students, for them to learn how to do roundabouts young
you
in
go.
life, won't put them in a position that I see so many of the middle-aged and older people having difficulty with that. Just saying.
Okay. So,
All we're doing is giving them the land, they get to decide what to do. But we
right.
could say with
Right.
the suggestion.
Mr. Connor.
I will just say, yeah, roundabouts and how many accidents have been hit?
There's been a few accidents.
Maine and
at
Auburn.
Maine and Auburn.
Just saying.
Okay. All right, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 11A, the easement for the traffic signal installation on Pierpont Avenue.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes. Oh,
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
Our remaining items are our litany of board policies. Unless there's anyone that wants to pull a particular one, I'm going to ask that we vote on all of these changes all at once. Unless there's one that you have want to have a discussion about.
You had a motion?
I don't think we need one, do we? Okay.
Yeah.
vote on all of them.
All righty.
Yeah. So I move that we vote on all of the board policies together.
Second for that?
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion or questions? Okay. We need to call the roll on the approval of that motion.
Actually, Mike.
Yes, sir, Mike.
I will just say thank you to the legal staff. I pointed out 2 issues,
Yep.
one about the committee of the whole and the other about the co-curricular, and thank you.
Yep.
The changes were made, I appreciate it.
The strong assist from press.
There you go, all right.
That's right, there you go.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on that motion that we vote on all of them.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 absent.
All right, so now I'll take a motion that we approve the board policies 2.30, 2.70, 2.120, 2.150, 2.260, 6.130, 6.135, 7.55, 7.110, 7265, and board policy 7.300.
It's a point of order. Isn't that what we just did? Sorry.
Oh,
I think
okay.
we just did that,
I thought we
right?
voted just saying
No.
that we were going to vote on all of them.
No.
Okay.
It was like, we bundled them
Never
all.
mind then.
That's right.
All right,
Cost you a minute, Ken.
I'm really sorry. I thought we had to do it in 2 steps. Yeah. Are there any other business items for tonight? Seeing none, I'll ask, okay, Ms. McCullough.
I see Ms. McGee leaving, and I think we're supposed, Chris, are we supposed to say good luck?
Okay.
Robotics.
So, yeah, we have people going to the robotics, and I know it's not new business, and I should have said it during the board member comments, but good luck to you and the 2 students that are going with you.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for all your work you do with that, Chris.
Great job, great job. Any other items? If not, then I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Connor, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:37.